Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for the lively group. I would just suggest that some people can come to the front, grab something to snack on while the platform, while the program is happening. There are drinks and finger foods up in front. We will start in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the official Municipal World podcast launch. Sitting before you today is the epitome of hashtag Black Girl Magic, Miss Moto Wandile Jene, but everybody at Empire Partner Foundation calls me Norma. So this is Norma. And I have the privilege of being your program director and MC for the day. I'm going to keep it quite demure, quite cutesy, very mindful. But before I become cutesy with the program, I will be welcoming the Empire Partner Foundation CEO. I call her the Durban Dynamite, and she goes by the name of Miss Joanna Govender. Now she's the only person that could compete with me when it comes to being the epitome of girl magic. So over to Miss Joanna Govender for her opening and welcome. Thank you. A round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joanna Govender. I'm the CEO of Empire Partner Foundation and EPF Tech Fund. Welcome to our ecosystem. Welcome to our hub. There's three of these, so if ever you're in Cape Town, we've got one at the V&A waterfront and one in Bellville. Thank you so much for your presence today with these two beautiful women that have so much of insight into this space. Just a little bit of our ecosystem. When you see these fancy offices and you say, what do these guys do? I've been asked that like 3 times. So we are an ecosystem. Empire Partner Foundation is an NPO, started in 2016 to solve public sector challenges using technology with the development of youth. So we are into or focused on the foundation itself. We've got 4 products. We're one of the very few sustainable NPOs in the country. We have our own products. There's a stack of 4. We run hackathons, solving challenges for industry, looking at recruitment, entrepreneurship development, and idea generation. Then we've got visible social impact, which would be valuable to every single stakeholder sitting here because it's a platform that we've developed that takes all of your data that you know over the years and it shows the impact that you've made. So I always take examples like Harambe that is around for so many years and they've made all of this impact, but all we can do is talk about it. With visible social impact, you can actually show what you've done with impacts, with graphs, showcasing, and not only will it bring you funding, it will actually showcase what you've been doing and show you, you know, the stats in between where you've gone wrong. You can put in interventions and KPIs. Then we have our EPF production house, and it's a great thank you to Amber Williams, Emil, our creative production house manager, Mikhail's here as well. They have created this entire podcast. They've worked with Dr. Tina and Municipal. They've done all of this. That's one of our segments as well. Then we have Trust Us, which is our project management division, where we go into industry and we create projects. And creating projects like micro enterprise development in the township sector, we've done over 400 to date. And you know, if you want more detail, I'll give you more detail. It's in rush right now. It's a long speech. is the greatest asset that South Africa and Africa has is the youth potential that we have in this country. And 65% of our population is youth. And with calculations, age gap, age average is 18,8, 18 years old. And it is our duty, businesses, NPOs, as citizens, to come together and develop these individuals to ensure that our country and our future is in our hands. You know, I would have referenced Trump, but I'm not going to. And then that's one part of the ecosystem, which is the NPO Empire Partner Foundation. We've got EPF Tech Fund, which is a venture building company that invests in youth-owned black tech startup companies focused on IoT, Internet of Things, data, and fintech. And we've got 17 tech startup companies within the tech fund. And it's not just the funding we provide as a VC company, but it's the building portion that's important. When you look at a tech entrepreneur, you would find that they lack financial literacy, leadership skills, problem solving skills. And that's the gap we bridge as a venture builder, where we're not operationally involved, but we strategically intervene to ensure that these companies become successful. Of the 17, 5 are success stories today, and they're trading on their own, they're successful. And that's the EPF Tech Fund. Then we've got the Artificial Intelligence Campus. This is 120 youth. The eldest person is 28 years old. We just launched our FSCA app today, which they were very impressed with. And I said nothing as a CEO in the meeting. The kids handled it on their own, their entire project. It was the most amazing experience for me, watching our youth do that. So we bring on graduates from university. We train them over a 12-month period on our ORCA system. And it's not just an internship where it's a bum on the seat. We go through the process with them, we put them onto ORCA, we put in a rubric, we ensure that their career path is fulfilled. And if we don't retain them, we place them in industry with partners like Deloitte, Metis Capital, Meditech SA, but 90% is retained here at EPF. And then they also develop a lot of software, MTN, Vodacom, we've got Department of Science and Innovation now, Department of Social Development. So there's a lot of clients in the ecosystem that these youth are building solutions for and solving challenges within their industries. So that's our ecosystem. It's a lot. I didn't tell you guys everything, but if you want to engage, please feel free. Once again, welcome to EPF. Welcome to our family. You're all a family now, so you're welcome to walk in here and meet with us. And a very big thank you to Dr. Tina and Municipal. I'm going to hand over and wish you all a lovely, insightful evening.
Thank you so much to the Durban Dynamites for that very warm and informative opening and welcoming. Now we are going over to I would like to assume, or presume actually, in more legal terms, to presume that everybody has a copy of the program so that we know where we are at all times. If you do not have one, please let us know and then we can pass them around just so that everybody is aware of where we are in the program. It's a very short program, and then after this we're going to have some wine. But before we have some wine, and while we are having our head of marketing pass over the programs, we are going to hand over to the podcast host to give us a background and purpose of the Municipal Bill podcast. Over to Dr. Tina Nzo.
Thank you so much, Noma. Wow. I'm truly, truly amazed by the outcome that we have tonight, and taking into account that we also have other guests who are not online. I know some of them, they are international guests. I know we've got guests from Namibia, the UK, and also Germany who are online. So thank you so much for logging on to this podcast launch. So let me just give you a little bit of a background in terms of how did we get to launch this podcast? Where did the idea come from? So, Municipal and I, we attended a leadership forum last year. community leaders, academics, practitioners, and we were in this leadership forum because the owner of the leadership program said that this country needs to bring together multiple thinkers to try and look for solutions in our government system. So one of the things that we had to do, Nasiba, if you remember correctly, was to start thinking about projects. It was not just about theorizing, but we needed to start thinking about projects that we could do. So coming from the local government sector, I was thinking, I know that I'm not very active on the ground when it comes to doing, collectively with communities. I have a specific talent, and that talent is to speak, to write, and to publish. How can I use that to advocate my work that can contribute towards change in society, particularly at local government level? So I thought back and I was like, Nasiba, you know what? I do a lot of interviews on TV. And sometimes these TV interviews, they just only give you about 5 minutes to talk about a topic. And obviously you can't go into depth, talking about those topics. And sometimes I even get responses from people who have been watching these TV interviews to say, hey, you know what, you've enlightened us. We didn't even know, for example, one person said, we didn't even know how a municipal manager is appointed. We thought a municipal manager is appointed by the mayor, not council. And also the removal of a municipal manager, the process that you have to go through. Exactly. So I was like, you know what? There's a lot of things floating around in local government, and yet our communities really don't understand how local government works. So maybe one should actually look at developing a podcast concept, and this is where I brought Nasiba in. Nasiba, would you like to comment? Because you come from the SACG's network and your thoughts that came through.
Yeah. So you, the brains behind this thing. At the Cities Network, we thought about a podcast, but I personally. So it was so wonderful to have somebody that thought about this thing, same mind, and say, let's do this. For me, it was about sitting at a family dinner, and you'd hear auntie okanye umakhulu talking about what's happening at local government, but you get the sense that, I wish I can just sit down and explain to you that actually that's not how things happen at the municipality. And the news are obviously not going to give you that one. Um, and as much as there are books written about local government, but they're not targeted at my aunt or at my uncle about local government. So how about we just have a chat and bring the friends that we like and say, let's talk about local government. Obviously, you start by setting the scene, understanding what's happening at local government. How is this beast set up? Why was it established? What is it meant to do? And you try to bring in what's currently happening. And what I've really appreciated with us doing this podcast, a few episodes that we've recorded, is that we try to bridge the theory or the legislation with what is currently happening. So for those episodes when we were looking at water, we then linked it up to what is topical, what's happening in the many cities, because it's not just Joburg. I know most of us are from Joburg. But understanding why we're having this issue around water, who's supposed to do what, and to also hear alternatives, because we were very intentional to say this is not going to be about us bringing in city officials and city politicians alone to this platform, but it was about us bringing alternative voices as well. People that were there at the beginning of the local government setup, people that have left local government, people from different political parties, people from business, people from academia, as well as people from the not-for-profit sector. Because when we say local government, when you look at every legislation, it talks about participatory democracy. And it's not just about party politics, but all these actors coming together and making our cities or our municipalities great, be they rural, be
process included legislation, the development of new legislation, redemarcation, establishment of municipalities, and also setting up new council structures, the administration, etc. So pieces of legislation had to be developed during that process. So ultimately, the last piece of legislation that was developed was in 2000, which is the Municipal Finance Management Act, and that was the final consolidation of local government. But what we are seeing 25 years later is that this democracy project that we thought we had completed in 2000 is actually going through a stage of what I call state formation, a growing, ongoing process of state formation. Because before we celebrate 25 years of local government, we need to look back. We need to critically reflect. All these pieces of legislation in the white paper, what have they yielded 25 years later? Right now we are talking about the review of the local government white paper. Where is that coming from? What assumptions were being made back in those days, and what are the outcomes of that? And you know, a lot of things have happened in the process. We have DPLG, remember DPLG? Yeah, Department of Provincial and Local Government produced a number of interventions that were followed by Project Consolidate, clean audits.
We started with back to basics.
Really?
Yeah, I remember. So it was much of being a back to basics and where are we now? DDM. Okay.
DDM. We've got municipal infrastructure support agencies that were created, but what we're sitting with in local government when it comes to our infrastructure and building institutional capacity. So there are a lot of problems that we are seeing because these problems we are encountering these issues on an everyday basis. We're not sitting here as individuals coming from various institutions, but we are also citizens. And whatever happens at local government level, it affects us. Which actually brings me to the name, Municipal Bill. Why did we choose the word Municipal Bill for the podcast? For one simple reason. Those of us who own properties, who are renting from our landlords, we get our municipal bills every month. We have to pay for our services. So the services that we are getting from local government. So there is a transactional relationship there, but I see it as a social contract. Because as much as we pay for our bills, but we expect value for money in return. So there is this social contract. We are connected to local government and we cannot hide from that. So I thought maybe municipal bill will be the right word to use just to frame this relationship that we have with local government.
And the keystone words as well, because municipalities, as much as they don't have bills, well, not the bill in terms of what you pay. We don't, in terms of legislature now, it's not the bills. But if you think about it, it's the actors in local government writing a bill of how they would like to interact with this local government, how that transaction should also take place. So that's very important. It's also surprising when we did a quick survey of how many people knew how to read their bills themselves. You'd ask anybody, well, around this room, you can ask a few people, do you know which ward you come from? We're not going to ask you which ward you come from. But it was surprising to know that there are people who do not know which ward they come from. They know their ward councillor, surprising enough, but they do not know which ward. And your municipal bill carries those details, right? And so it was significant for us that we use that because it's also something that connects you to how the space that has been demarcated to you and how you then transact with the municipality.
Absolutely. So another, important factor that I noticed was that through the discourse of local government, we know that protest action is what consolidates communities to come together and lament against local government. But then we forget that local government, as much as it is characterized by a community of protesters, which of course Alexandra used to term it as the rebellion of the poor. Now there is the rebellion in the ballot box. Hence we have hung councils. We are now sitting at around 66 to 70 hung councils. In the last election in 2021, coming from just a mere number of around 16. So in 2016, so it shows that there is no rebellion in the ballot box, and people feel very disengaged with the local government. It's not just only about protesting about service delivery, but what you're saying. People feel disengaged and disconnected. For example, what has been happening around issues related to water insecurity. Very little campaigns are being done in terms of making communities understand exactly why we are struggling with water security in the country. So I was like, no, you know what? Let's try and pull that in. Let's try and pull it in. But one aspect that we'd really like to mention is that this podcast is not just only a podcast that might drive government propaganda for local government. No, it's a program that will critically examine and critique local government. There are 5 priority areas, thematic areas that we are going to cover throughout the year until 2026. And those are related to municipal governance and political leadership. It's the erosion of institutional capacity and administration and management. It's also the poor financial performance and accountability, patronage and corruption, weak participation systems, but also tapping into the everyday aspects of what makes a municipality work. We've got communities who are actively involved in many activities that do not necessarily fall within the praxis of the formal economy. They make the city drive, and we need to understand what makes a resilient city. Hence, our communities, our youth, our civil society will be engaged in this podcast that I'd like to note.
Before you think that this is a podcast that's meant to bash or punch holes at municipalities, we also are going to use it to highlight the good things that are happening in our municipalities, because there are those. Some of them are done by municipalities themselves. Some we've seen good examples of partnership between municipalities and the private sector, and other initiatives that are done by NGOs who are not affiliated with municipalities. So trying to be very well rounded, and through demonstrating that, we're hoping that those that will be listening, those that will be watching, maybe they would want to learn from those examples. We will later on not just focus on municipalities as institutions, but on things that are happening in those municipalities as institutions, because municipalities are made up of people. There's an economy that takes place in a municipality. There's a social fabric that takes place in a municipality, which can determine how the citizenry then interact with those municipalities. So things like the creative industries, the economy, various sectors of the economy, as well as looking at making sure that we also touch to the very young ones. There's now an emphasis of planning for children in our cities. While we talk in this podcast targeting mainly, because we have to say this, the most people that are going to watch this are probably people with access to the internet. You can say that it's your middle class, be it lower and upper middle class. Those are the people that are not going to go to the streets and toy. Simply because, one, they would say that they're grinding, they're keeping the economy moving. But in most instances, they do not know how municipalities work. Those are people that have not been captured by the system, and you do need to get them to understand how municipalities work if they are to interact effectively with the municipality, instead of them saying municipalities are corrupt and it ends there without understanding how they work. Then we will look at others as well, the youth, how they engage with municipalities, what role they can play with municipalities. And we are hoping that through this podcast, the great initiatives that are done throughout the country by the various actors will trigger others to replicate the same, and these can grow across.
And another important aspect that we also bring in is the relationship between local government and the various spheres of government, the intergovernmental relations, understanding. When does the Department of Human Settlement come in? When does the Department of Water, come in? So there are these relationships, because communities will say, hey, we're demanding housing, but you might find that a small municipality, such as Municipal municipality, might not have, the responsibility of providing housing. So you've got to understand that relationship between national, provincial, and local government, and also understand this concept of autonomy. resolved by a mandate that is coming from provincial or national government. You understand? So we need to take people through these various aspects of looking at the relationship between local government and the different spheres and the players who are involved in that. But then, lastly, as we are coming towards the end, there are very critical, important factors that I really want to drive through because I'm part of local government. That's the historical aspects of local government. I'm sure we do have some municipal managers or political leaders who are, watching this podcast. I always tend to ask this question: do practitioners of local government understand how the local government system came to be what it is today? That's the historical lens of decentralization in South Africa. So we get into that historic. So when you watch this podcast, you see the first few episodes. It takes you through what we call umkhabulo, of understanding exactly how we came about to have the kind of model that we have that seems not to be working so nicely. Who was involved? What was it influenced? And South Africa has a highly decentralized system in Africa compared to other African countries. It's very devolved. But has it really worked for us? Because obviously we were trying to, to de-racialize and also provide a sense of bridging the inequalities, the racial inequalities that were there. But it seems as if like it hasn't really worked. So those segments, they are there at the beginning. Do watch, you learn a lot. You get to understand exactly, even with the performance management system that we have at local government level, that was informed by the new Public Management Act. And some would even say that, well, that was part of a neoliberal agenda. We'll have those debates. They're very important. Very important. So those are going to be those are going to be the first segments before we even move into sectoral issues. They're going to cover climate change, infrastructure, water, the built environment. We also include traditional authorities and land, because land and spatial planning is part of local government, the complexities that are involved there. And we also cover many other topics which are related to what we call the fourth industrial revolution, bringing in ICT, tech, smart cities. What does it mean within an African context of local government? So there are many that we're going to cover, but we're not going to start ahead with coalitions. So we just want to whet your appetite, because once we go to coalitions, it will be difficult for us to go back. So we'll have those segments at a later stage where we discuss coalition governments and also understanding what is this concept of state failure. Is local government a failing state or a fragile state? So we'll get to those topics. So as we're coming towards the end of our program, let me just allow you to say a thing or two before we close this part. Okay, not the end of our program, this first part of our program here.
I'm looking forward to the podcast growing. I'm looking forward to the podcast growing, and I'm excited to have friends around here, new friends, old friends who've taken their time to be with us here today. I know each and every one of them will at some point, if they haven't already, contributed to this podcast. And it is a podcast that's meant to be very simple in terms of its language. You ask questions that you might think that they're very obvious, but for somebody else, those questions are very important for them to understand what happens in the space. More than that, I'm looking forward to people, once they've watched the podcast, as they learn about local government, that they get more involved in local government matters, that they understand their own rights, but most importantly, their own responsibilities, and that they understand that municipal bill is something that they can use to effect change at a municipal level.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I should have had this conversation before I pursued my BA law. Because when you do a BA law, it's a double major, where you major in the law and another aspect of within humanities. And I chose international relations because thinking that I dodged that bullet. Guess what became a second elective in second year of second semester? Municipal bylaws. So I was like, I can't run away from this thing. I need to study it. So I'm actually quite interested in being part of Umkhabulo, and I hope with this podcast that we have youth members that are also quite hungry for that kind of information, particularly because the local government elections are coming up. We just recently had our national elections when we can see how the GNU is working in inverted commas question mark, for us. But I'm very interested in seeing how local government is, and because of what I'm seeing at the GNU, through previous local governments that became coalitions, I'm not surprised with what's happening with the GNU. So for those that have to probably have an appetite for politics and really understanding not just the rights of the municipal bill, but the responsibility that comes of it from government and to us as citizens to the government. So I'm very interested in seeing all of that take part with the podcast. Very super excited actually to see that, and I hope that from the first get go, my attention is taken and I'm running with it. So before we can really sit down and experience, because we are quite fortunate and privileged enough today to launch the podcast officially tonight, we would like to have a word of support from the executive mayor of the city of Tshwane, Nasipi Moya.
Yeah, no, something's wrong with my equipment.
It's a
Bro, one
Friday
camera's
evening,
died.
swine.
I'm not getting any feed from that camera.
No,
No,
I'll
I'm
be
trying to figure
very
it out.
brief. I wasn't expecting to say something, but I've learned that in this job you must always say something. I don't know who came up with that, but yeah, we'll talk about it. But thank you so much for this initiative. This is actually something that we're looking for. At a time where the leaders that we've had in local government has failed us dismally, and we need fresh thinking and fresh blood. And there's a way that we must get young people interested. And I think the type of people we're looking for are the target market here. So I think this is very relevant in 2025. Um, I come from a city that's really a young city. But when I engage my residents on Twitter, you realize, that the people that are more engaged are the elders and not the young people. And there's so much that I think young people can contribute in the middle class. And they're the ones that are paying the bills. And they pay what they don't understand. And so for me, I'm a fairly new executive mayor. I'm a student of public affairs, public administration, public policy. And I did my MA on exactly in this topic. I did my MA after the publishing of the 2009 State of the Local Government report by the then former late Sicelo Shitseka. And in 2009, we were told the local government has failed dismally. That was in 2009. And as a response at the time, very ambitious student, then I looked at what was the contributing factors, and I said, actually, national government is centralizing local government already. I had my case that I had to put in there. So when I approach local government, I approach it from a very optimistic, ideal point of view. What ought to happen? That we're dealing with the sphere that is supposed to be the closest. When you're saying, when we talk democratic decentralization, that you need a sphere that is closest to the people and with very clear mandate. What is the sphere supposed to do? And you'll find that in most of the time, the public leaders or politicians in local government, they spend most of their time looking at the things that are not a priority of local government. They want to replicate probably national government, at a local government level. Hence, you see these failures on the provision of basic services. But anyway, so for me, this is quite important. You say 25 years of local government. Last year we said we've celebrated 30 years of democracy in South Africa. This year was supposed to contribute significantly to the transformation. Just this year, the budget of municipalities this financial year is around 650 billion rands. But are we getting value for money in terms of the lives of the ordinary South Africans being changed? And this is 650 billion, you can say, but it's not enough, but it's the money that we have. And what is it that we are doing with that money? But I think what is important for me, earlier on you spoke about the social contract that is being eroded. My former colleague here will tell you every January, February, we go back to the communities, we tell them this is the performance on the annual report, where we are, more often than not, we tell communities we have not achieved what we're supposed to achieve. In March, you leave them very disappointed. In March, the legislation says go back to them and tell them that this is what you've planned going forward. And you'll find most of the time what we are saying, it's a copy and paste of what was discussed in some air-conditioned boardroom. It's got nothing to do with them and what they need and what their actual needs are. Do you know how we know? The fact that right now in our municipalities we've got a water security problem, as if we didn't know those reservoirs belong to us to maintain and upgrade, right? You can tell that we have not been prioritizing things that matter to the people. And so how we know, what is problematic for me is that the residents and citizens have just withdrawn their support and said, well, if you're gonna do this, I'm not gonna come to a public meeting because you're just lying to me or you're not listening to me. And those are the people that need to talk to us because, for instance, in Tshwane, we have a lot of people that don't have access to internet, as you were saying earlier. We're talking about people who are 34% of unemployment, mostly young people. So you can't get them on digital platforms. You must go to them to talk to them, but they won't listen to you if they don't buy into what you are saying. So when you create platforms like this, it may not reach everyone. But for me, I'm jealous because this platform needs to be protected so that we can get the future leaders of local government. Right now, local government is not sexy. No one wants to be a ward councillor because they insult ward councillors every day. When you insult, you don't want to be insulted back. No one wants to, be part of politics because the coalition, they don't give you the stability and the guarantee that you will get that job or you will be able to do what you need to do. So we need to use a platform like this, and you're correct in saying, yes, traditional media is there for us, but those are sound bites, and local government is quite complex. Now, you need to unpack. I had an interview about Hammanskraal water. I think I just confused this person. Let me just put it in writing because it's always like that with every explanation that you need to make. You need to then explain the context and everything. So for me, I'm quite happy with this platform. I try to be very brief. Yeah, but I think as a parting shot, we all agree that us as the selected few for now that are supposed to lead in local government, we need to be held accountable. Don't let us off the hook. We may not take calls and avoid certain journalists because that one I know is looking for me. But it's not an option not to get to hear our voices. So that's the first thing. We said we want to serve the public. What it means is that we must always be available for the public. However, it does not help when the conversation is antagonistic from the start. We need healthy discussions. Don't assume that I'm corrupt before so invite me. Because you all corrupt, you are eating. You're like, what are we eating? Because I've not gotten this one.
But the conversations must be healthy to an extent where you hold us accountable, but you get us to be open to you about the realities on the ground. And as you correctly say, issues of IGR, they're quite complex. I mean, this afternoon I just heard that there's a court order against it also. It's got nothing to do with us. It's about province, but you know, and so what we are looking for as well is an outlet as leaders. We want a platform where I can come and you ask me the questions that the residents would have liked to ask me. But I shouldn't then hide information because the conversation is so antagonistic that I'm feeling like you're about to catch me and this will cost my career in 2026. But with all those words, congratulations, ladies. And you have a number one fan in me now. I will watch everything. The nerd in me is very much excited about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nasipi. And before anything, I would like to go over to the lady so that we can officially launch the podcast with a video clip.
Please get more skilled and competent political leaders. Of course, it's a debate for another day, but it just shows you that we are slowly but surely making a difference. Yeah.
What's also always very interesting, even the ones that leave, I call it the public service, it's a service. Um, and I always share my own experiences in local government. So I worked in local government for 12 years in different metropolitan municipalities. Um, and I wish that I had started there because everything that I needed to know was in local government. And I tell my friends, some of them who left local government, I say to them, when you speak to your family members, speak on our behalf as local government because you know how hard it is. You also know the great things that we do in local government can help them understand the system of local governance. And it's very encouraging to see people that have left the sector. Some of them are in this room. They're no longer in local government, but they're still doing wonderful, wonderful work to advocate for the communities that they live in, to make sure that they spread the word that says it happens at local government and therefore we need to focus building the capacity. Not only the capacity, as I keep reminding you, is the capability in local government. And she laughs at me because I say capacity is at an individual level. Capability is the system that you have to work within. So you can be capable, Dr. Moya, but if the environment, if the soil is not tilled and fertilized, that seed is not going to germinate, no matter how good it is. Yeah, that's what it is.
And then we then get into a debate of saying, but remember, in South Africa, we need to start from scratch. Individual capacity, then we move into institutional capacity. We have a long way to go because we've proven from our system that there are certain people who occupy CFO positions and they only have matric. Anyway, let me just hand over to Noma because we'll have the third item, which is now the actual launch of the podcast. Is Noma still around? Okay, all right, okay. Trying to upload our little video footage. We'll
when we speak about a municipality, sometimes we forget that this wall-to-wall arrangement is not only with cities. It's very easy for us to be biased towards cities. And when we were talking about this, we were talking about rural municipalities as well, who not only have to deal with issues of capacity and capability, but they also have to deal with the tension that exists between traditional leaders and the councillors as well. So at some point we'll be discussing that. I had an interesting discussion last week with somebody who, now before I mess up the titles, I don't know whether Inkosi or Induna or whatever it is, but it's very important. That I know. Very, very important. And one of the things that he was complaining about is how what he said is municipalities taking away the power to allocate land that Amakosi or the traditional leaders had in the past. And these are the things that maybe Dr. Moya would understand this, because for those that do not know, Tshwane has got 3 traditional leaders. Is it 2 now? Mandebele, Ganzuza, and yeah. But other metropolitan municipalities do not know this. In fact, in the metropolitan municipalities that we have, we only have 3. So it's eThekwini, it's Buffalo City municipality, as well as the city of Tshwane that have got traditional leadership in them. So it would be good, we will do this deliberately, to also touch on issues of traditional leadership and how it interfaces with the municipal system. And to see how we can perfect the system, because one doesn't want to do away with a system of governance. Traditional leadership is a system of governance on its own. How do you make sure that it is complementary, but you also do that in a way that doesn't make the other to seem to be superior to the other? Because as much as we complain about provinces wanting to play big sister on local municipalities, we then turn and do the same thing when it comes to traditional leadership as well. So those are the things that we've been looking at. Are we not good?
Would you say fix the TV volume on the TV?
Okay, cool.
They're still getting a little of the live stream, that's why.
Sorry.
So that you're mentioning that, because there's now a proliferation of communities, elderly communities in urban centers moving into the periphery of rural areas. Oh yeah, excellent. Lovely, lovely. Okay, now that we're ready, let's get on to it. Shall we move? Oh yes, because the TV on that side is not working, can we kindly ask those who are sitting on the other side to just come closer, and then to also ask all the panelists that are
and we will be opening the discussion on celebrating 25 years of local government. As we know, the municipal bill is all about understanding, engaging with, and respecting ourselves within local government and also our responsibilities thereof. So I hand over to our panel.
Thank you very much, Amber, for that brief introduction. We deliberately decided not to have any voices speaking because we want you to go and listen to what we have been discussing lately with the episodes that we've already shot. But I'm sure some of you saw familiar faces there, such as Trevor Fowler, who used to be the MEC of local government back in the days, and he became the city manager at City of Joburg. Quite incredible wealth of experience there. And we also have, Ibrahim Fakir. I think everybody knows Ibrahim Fakir, who has been really, really giving us very good points of discussion when it comes to our electoral system. So, please do stay tuned. Every Friday, we will be airing an episode, and we guarantee you every Friday we'll be airing an episode. And obviously, you'll see some guests coming back because we'll touch on different aspects, like what the mayor has said. Local government is a very broad and complex field of study, field of application, field of service delivery. There are different sectors, multiplicity of them, so we can't get one topic done within one episode. So today we've got people who are going to be participating in a short little panel. We thought it's very important that we bring in people who are also obviously known quite well in the space of media and civil society. We've been working in the local government space. We've got Alex Patrick. Alex is a journalist for News 24. She covers a lot of local government related matters. And it's very important that we have media because media is the platform where we get a lot of information relating to the way in which the state is working. And obviously, you guys also interrogate and you play an indirect accountability role when it comes to looking at how the state is implementing its so-called promises and how they are using those resources and how they're making the decisions, etc. And we also have Mr. Lukwana Nguni. I heard in one of the podcasts somebody saying that, you are going to be soon going to be called doctor. Lukwana is the director of Rivonia Circle. I'm sure you guys have heard about Rivonia Circle, which is a civil society entity that played a very important role when we were going towards the national and provincial government elections. He's an activist. He also has an element of being a journalist sometimes. I remember being part of his program, I think it was on ENCA, right? Yeah, when I was called in to reflect on local government, and he's been drilling politicians non-stop. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to that show, Lukwana, but let's not get into that. So we'll just be reflecting. I mean, the topic of discussion today is 25 years of local government. We'd really love to reflect on what have been your observations over these years, particularly to the way in which our political system has delivered democracy, inclusive participation, delivering the services that has been expected to be delivered, issues related to institutional capacity, the quality of leaders that we have, and what we have seen is the disconnect between our political representatives and communities. Maybe it has to do with the way in which our electoral system is also designed. I don't know. But just to kickstart the conversation, look, I'll start with you. You've been following up on local government for quite a while, and you have expressed some very important remarks over the years about the way in which local government is working. But I would like to get your input into the way you have
change in the sense that power has shifted from one political party to another, leading to coalitions. But let's reflect on the years of the ANC when it was a dominant party that had a lot of political representation in the different councils. Was it better back then, or something happened in between when it comes to the political governance and leadership?
Well, something is always happening. The first thing I wanted to say though today is that it's either we are crazy about local government to be here on a Friday night, or there's a real crisis that needs serious resolution, and hopefully we'll have some resolution. Let's actually take the city of eThekwini, because when you are asking people which wards are they from, I know I'm from Ward 33 in eThekwini. I'm not sure here in Joburg. I think it's Ward 127. Doesn't matter. I still don't get water anyway. So I mean, local government really does. Well, yes, we say 25 years of local government, but actually the reforms in the sector predate the 25 years. I mean, the unification of various sub-councils. For example, if you take the city of eThekwini, Umlazi used to be its own thing, Pinetown used to be its own thing, Westville used to have its own thing, Central City, etc. And that process begins in 1995 really, to try and unify these sub-councils into the elections that we have in some instances. I mean, if you take Tshwane, Centurion, and the likes were all subdivided and self-governing in some way. And that created an interesting complexity in terms of governing and in terms of resources sharing, because then you needed to negotiate where was the greatest revenue coming from in the city, and how were you then redistributing that revenue and so on. But to talk the juice that you are interested in, I mean, as interested when you spoke about Umkhabulo, I mean, it's 25 years of local government, it's 70 years of the Freedom Charter this year. And these are all very important reflection points in terms of where we are and in terms of where we are with the power of the ANC. Now, people have always wanted to focus on the changing landscape and say, you know, these coalitions are bringing us problems and so on. But the truth is that if you go to that small municipality next to my hometown, Port St. George, where the ANC was dominant, was in power, but you had two speakers, two mayors, two city managers, two chief whips, and so on. So this idea about political stability and, you know, or instability is not just a question of whether or not the ANC has lost power. The question is, what did the ANC do with the power that it had in some instances? I mean, you go to the 2011 local government elections when Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma was appointed to review the candidate selection of the ANC. It was a part of the problem is that as a party and as an institution, the entire thing has collapsed. It's just that it's collapsing from a very great, you know, point. But really, the ANC as an organization is probably something that exists in name and not in action. So Zuma went to my village when there was an issue with the ward candidate, and she actually took the poster apparently and said, "I've never seen something like this. The face and the name did not match, because the comrades had elected somebody to be the ward candidate, but at the last minute they reversed it. But now they forgot to substitute the face and the name. So so the face was Lukona, but the name was Tinanzo. And that's the crisis, really, that epitomizes the sheer contestation. And of course, lastly, I mean, because I was engaged with the process, I still stayed in KZN at the time when the Muirane Commission happened on political violence in KwaZulu-Natal. And one of the findings that Muirane makes there is that, I mean, of course, people talk about, you know, qualifications for becoming candidates and so on, but he accepts that the Constitution actually constrains us, that we cannot say for you to be a candidate, you should have matric or whatever. But the political parties internally can do something about it to hire, to put higher, you know, barriers to entry. Because currently what we see, I just shoot you, and die and I get to be next online. And that's really what we were dealing with in KZN. So I'm trying to say the hegemony of the ANC has visited us with all of those issues and all of those problems. And are the newer parties acting differently? Are they, optimizing on the opportunities that are visited by a weakening ANC? We can talk about that. But I think we are going to have a serious crisis come the next election. My prediction is that plus or minus 80% of municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal will be under coalition. And we've got to look at that and what it means for the stability of that province, for the politics of those provinces. Because I do think that the biggest beneficiary from the whole MK issue in KZN, you look at the recent by-election, is actually the IFP. And that's because the MK breaks the vote of the ANC, but it then allows the IFP to go through as a majority party. And we need to watch and we need to see what that responsibility means for newer actors and newer hegemonies. And I think the IFP is probably back on the rise in KwaZulu-Natal and so on. But we can talk about other issues and other provinces, but not the city that we are in.
Thank you, Lukhona. Alex, I'd like you to come in while we are still talking about issues related to political representation and the shift in power. I know that you do a lot of work in covering local government, particularly the inner workings of local government institutions. I know that sometimes you even go to a council meeting and you sit there the whole day following the agenda of council. Now, the hookup line here is people are lamenting that, you know what, coalitions are not working. But on the contrary, coalitions should be working because they provide a platform of deliberative democracy. Now, if you can provide us with a little bit of insight in terms of what you have observed, particularly when it comes to the way in which council is conducted and the decision-making processes. Not so long ago, I mean, at national level, we just experienced a very bizarre thing that we were not expecting, the budget not being tabled. And that's not something new. We've seen it from local government. So maybe if you can give us a little bit of an insight in terms of what have you observed when it comes to that, I don't know, how should I put it, a theatre of representation, because that's theatre. Council is like a theatre. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that is one of my favorite topics because I do actually spend a lot of time sitting in the gallery and actually watching what goes on. And I really think it's so important that residents go and watch. It is their right to go and watch. It is their right, but not in Johannesburg. Johannesburg is a little bit different. Um, they have to first ask permission. They have to be invited. And as a journalist, I'm used to going, writing my name down, walking upstairs. I now ask ahead of time, let them know, because I don't need any barrier of entry. So you have a complete empty gallery. You have which they say, it is still open because we've got our YouTube channel, but we haven't paid the guys who film. So if anyone's watched the YouTube channel, yeah, if it works, it's great. But as soon as there's any kind of something, suddenly the sound is not working, or like we've gone on break again, caucus break for 5 hours, and now nobody comes back. But anyway, besides that, what you do see is a circus, and it's incredibly. I always say I was a crime reporter, and at least with crime, I had a little bit of hope. Because you saw that there were people helping, and when you sit and obviously but when you sit in that gallery and you watch and people are disrupting and this one's got a joke to make and I mean
got this bag of earrings they were selling, so you drop this. And this council meeting costs the taxpayers 600,000 rand per council sitting. It's got no interpreters, so you know if you are in any way hard of hearing, you don't know what's going on. Behind the booths, it's a beautiful council, and it's supposed to have translators. There's no translators there, so if there's any language issue, you just have to deal with it. Sexism is rife. Catcalling from male councillors goes on. Racism from all sides. Jewish members are constantly berated without even asking, which side of the wall you sit on. And members of the LGBTQIA plus community are also ragged on. And often the speaker does not reprimand them. It just gets, and not to mention the fact that council starts at 10, but it actually starts at 2. It starts whenever people decide to arrive there. And that is why I'm saying it is so important for residents to actually see what is going on in that council. And I'm not just saying Johannesburg, this is happening in every council. Ekurhuleni, I watched people punch each other. It was, that's a circus. People literally punching each other and wigs being taken off and, clothes being ripped and the mayor's phone getting stolen by somebody and then found in, so I might have gone off track a little bit. But I am an eternal optimist, and I do believe in hope, and I do believe in coalition governments, and I do think if they work properly, if rules are followed, they can work. Yeah, I have so much to say about this, but anyway.
So, with that amusement, because some of the things that you're telling us, they seem to be too funny to be true, one was to say. Obviously, municipal councils are the apex where the decisions of a municipality are taken. And we should be interested to know what is happening at council. Maybe I should direct this to you. So if I can't, then go to a municipal council and see what is happening. What else can I do to make sure that I participate in the decision making of local government? That's number one. And number two, how do I keep them accountable so that we see less and less of these things that are happening, which you are telling us that they're happening in municipalities. So I'm talking to citizens now, not to councillors, but to citizens. What can they do to make sure that we see less and less of that happening in our councils?
Just to add on the amusement, I was doing some research in a local municipality in Western Cape, and I was in the CFO's office, and he says to me, "You see that cleaning machine?" I say, "Yeah, it's very fancy for the Eastern Cape." I don't know. He says, "Yeah, why it's standing there? The cleaner, because now we're approaching, it was 2021, approaching 2021 local election. The cleaner is the branch secretary where the chief whip comes from. The chief whip got the cleaner the job in the municipality. But now because it's almost election time, the cleaner will determine the future of the chief whip. Whether or not they will come back in the party list. And therefore now the cleaner decides when and how she comes back. These are the realities. But how do the citizens get involved? I often say local government is probably the most legislated sphere of government. In the Constitution, in the Municipal Systems Act, in the Municipal Structures Act, we came up with what committees, for example, Section 75 of the Municipal Structures Act, the politicians have completely eroded the vision of those municipal, those ward committees. Because the ward committees were meant to be sectoral representatives. Go read the devolution, for example, in Kenya, and how they've legislated those county councils and so on. And the ward structure, the ward committee structure was meant to be something close to that. I mean, in Kenya, they've gone a very long way. You can only abolish devolution through a referendum of the entire country. That's what the legislation says in Kenya. Here, we have a lot of things that are available to citizens. By the way, when you talk about participation, I think we are talking about the ability to ask questions or not. If you look at some of the council chambers, they don't have a public gallery, right? The cities are fortunate, they've got a public gallery. But if you go to actually local municipalities, the last councillor's chair is at the door. It is at the door of the council chamber, which means then that the public actually can't participate because there's no provision for them to participate. Because I think let's remove ourselves from this fanfare of the cities because that doesn't tell the full story of what actually is happening. You were talking about traditional leaders earlier. There's actually a provision of a percentage of councils to actually be traditional leaders, and the traditional leaders in the more rural areas actually have to nominate their representatives to council. But they still get there, they don't have chairs. Because the chairs are fixed to the number of councillors who are actually the representatives in those. So the last point I want to raise, by the way, if you read the whole legislation on local government, do people know that citizens can do a performance review on a municipality? It's provided for in law. It doesn't have to be the council that only reviews the business of the municipality. The citizens themselves, organized properly enough, can do a performance review of the municipality. And that's why you had the developments in the judiciary. For example, you go to Makanda and in Grants Tower, citizens are then able to actually force an MEC to put a municipality under review. These are the avenues that are available to citizens to do that. I mean, there's a problem now in Machabeng, in Belco, where the DA is trying to put that municipality under review. So I'm trying to say there are a number of avenues available. So it's not just about getting the questions about your water problem. It's about us thinking more broadly in terms of what the legislation actually permits us to do. The legislation permits us to do a lot of things. And I think even these things, whether we are looking for meritocracy, we are looking for administrative prudence and so on, we have not exercised our powers properly as citizens. And yes, it's correct, we must go to that council sitting and so on. But then some of us feel, actually, council does very little for me. The problem I have is national government. It's the 17% and all of these other things that are a real problem. And so sometimes, lastly, we've got to ask ourselves when we say which citizens should be participating, but we have to ask what dividend are they looking for? Because if you don't participate in a system that doesn't accrue any dividend to you, I'm not going to go to the council meeting to watch politicians making a circus and calling for adjournments and fighting over, silly and petty things. Which budget affects me the most as Bukon? The budget that affects me the most is probably Enoch Kodongwana's budget more than the CFO's budget, and therefore that's where I would participate. So we must also not admonish people for not necessarily participating, because you've got to ask what dividend accrues to me for participating. Why must I go to a meeting at Midrand Fire Station about water when there won't be water next week? What's the value on my time? So we've got to also ask, has the system gotten so bad that actually there's no value for people to participate?
Can I just come in there? And I think that's where the media is actually lacking, because that's our role. We are meant to sit there, watch it, and give it to the people so they understand what happened in council. And as I understand it, there's only three, dedicated Metro reporters in the country. So, and Metro is so huge. You've got your water issues, you've got, so with only three, you've got to give that much information to all of these communities. And, my job, actually, Dr. Mayor, you said, my job this will affect you. And I think we're not doing that enough.
Just also to add on a little bit, because I really take interest in the ability to be there and observe. Because in my PhD I also did that. I did an ethnographic study for a whole entire year being in a municipality, trying to link it with whatever theoretical framework that I was trying to develop. One thing that I am finding to be very puzzling is the information sharing from local government. The agenda, I know that in cities they have programming to set the agenda for council. But within the platforms of communication, whether municipalities now on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, you hardly see a municipality or a city actually advertising a council sitting, declaring that this will be part of the agenda. As a community, which other issues do you think you would like to see on the agenda as a priority area? Post council sitting, you hardly hear what resolutions have been taken and what kind of resolution compendium that has been developed in order to follow those resolutions, whether those resolutions have got to do with the ward or whatever. So, from your perspective, Alex, you've been there, you've seen what's going on. Do you think that the kind of political representatives know how to link their role of representing the communities and also making sure that they communicate back to the community and compel the city to be communicated towards their citizens? Let's not even talk about the agenda. I've seen those agendas. They're quite big agendas, and sometimes I don't even think that councillors get to read the agenda. In my study, councillors even told me that we hardly read this agenda because it's too big, it's too technical, we don't understand some of the things, so we just endorse, you understand? So I'd really like to get your perspective on that when it comes to the real element of communication.
As recommended.
So, as an example, today we had an extraordinary council sitting, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much about Johannesburg, but it's an interesting place. The agenda for this extraordinary sitting, so that's a sitting, it's over and above the usual sitting. This is usually when there's emergencies or something needs to go through. The agenda did not go to councillors until 8 o'clock this morning, and the meeting was at 10. So communication, they can't even tell their constituents, this is what's going on. Do you have any questions that I can take to council? They can't do that. We are not told as media. We used to be given the agendas. We're not allowed to see the agendas anymore. We have to have them leaked. And I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know if that's quite legal. But there are pockets. There are pockets, and like I said, I am very hopeful. On Thursday, there was a launch called Reimagine Randburg, and this is a business launch where businesses in Randburg have decided that they are taking over, the painting of the streets. And just the idea is because we cannot afford our backlogs in infrastructure, they are just going to look after what's in front of them with the hope that the store next door is going to go, okay, now I look trash, now I'm going to look, and so, and that is because they work very donations, massive donations, and the donors are some interesting personalities with a lot of money. So, yeah, I don't know if I've answered that question. I can go on all night.
Maybe while we're talking about that, because when we say municipalities, they are not just made up of councillors. They're made up of communities as well, of businesses, and we've spoken about, you've touched on the role that businesses can play in getting things right. While we understand that there are roles and responsibilities in terms of those schedules of the constitution of what municipalities need to do. I want us to get to a point where maybe you can share with us, while things might look dire, do we have examples of where things have really worked great, and we say that if it can be replicated in these municipalities or other municipalities? Because this podcast is not only about saying what's not going right in municipalities, but also amplifying what is going right in those. And I'm sure that the two of you do have those examples. Otherwise, I'm packing my bags and taking a bottle of wine.
Make it two bottles. Look, I mean, there are pockets, even within the dire municipalities, there are pockets of things that actually do well. There have also just been a number of initiatives. I mean, we go back to the urban non-renewal program here in Alex, but you go to Etegwini, for example, where you've got the launch of the area-based management, whether it's INC or Inandanduzu, Mawamashu, and so on. And those kinds of things have actually brought municipalities, communities, and business together to actually unlock. I mean, if you look at the story, I mean, it's incomplete, but if you look at the Bridge City Mall development, for example, in Wamash, and the kinds of partnerships that had to be unlocked between government, communities, and businesses, and to try and bring everybody close, it's actually quite an interesting story. So, but these things are largely driven by individuals and not the institution. So you spoke about capacity and capability. I think what we are struggling with at local government level is to really unlock this question of capability. So when you have a municipal council, as Salga told us after 2016, in KZN, that not a single individual councillor had more than a metric in the council. Yeah? You've got a problem, because where does the AG report go? The AG report goes to the council and to the MPs. That's where it goes. So that's the kind of technical gravitas and capacity that we need to develop in our municipal councils, to a point that, as we are talking about this review of local government, and Clarissa has asked an interesting question, which I think will drive into this review process, which is to say, do we need the two-tier system? We need the local municipalities and the district municipalities. Or we need to rethink. I mean, back before 1994, and this is why sometimes I say, sometimes we hate everything that has happened in the past because of where it belongs in terms of location. Do we need to go back to town administrators and maybe have the political leadership of it all sit at the district level? Have people represented at the district level, but the local municipalities really become administrative issues. The other problem that we have in the sector, you're asking for good examples. I'm saying there are pockets, even in the mess. I'm sure. I mean, there are people in the city of Johannesburg who really believe that they are waking up to do good work, and I feel sorry for them. But it is what it is. They really do believe that they wake up, they are honest people, they are doing good work, and so on. But the other thing that we have to be honest about is this issue, and I'm sure you'll be interrogating it in the podcast, this political administrative interface at local government. And colleagues at PARI note in the event we did in October last year, colleagues at PARI are actually interrogating this thing and using a few cities as a clear case study. The problem at local government, unlike at national and provincial, the demarcation. So one city manager says to me, you see, the problem is that the chief whip's office is 2 doors away from me. Now, chief whip thinks that we are co-governing the city, me and him as city manager. In fact, chief whip even sits in interviews and informs people of the outcome before I can communicate the outcome of the interviews. This political administrative interface very, very important for us to, which is why some people have asked, we need an ombuds for local government, because it's quite clear. The councillors are co-governing with the bureaucracy in local government, unlike the national level and the provincial level. Lastly, CFO says to me, I can't dispose of furniture that is clearly sitting as an impairment in my balance sheet without a council resolution. Because the councillors are co-governing, they're not doing oversight. Unlike parliamentarians are doing oversight over the executive. Whether they are doing a good job at it or not is another story altogether. So I'm saying there are pockets that are working, but these are some of the clear issues that we now need to forcefully stop debating them, because this political administrative interface thing comes from a document at DPLG when Sidney Mufumadi was there. It was an issue then, it's still an issue now. But how do we resolve these things?
Alex, do you want to just contribute just 1 minute of your optimism of local government and pockets of excellence before we close this session?
Sure, why not? You know, I have seen pockets of excellence, and what those municipalities have, those local municipalities have, are people who've been there for 20 years. You know, they're people who know what they're doing, and they live actually in that municipality, because that's another issue. And I think, you know, this revolving door of mayors and leadership, the problem with that is people aren't thinking long term. They're not invested in that city. They know they're there hopefully for 2, 5, 3, whatever years. So they know that in order to make a difference, or in order to be seen making a difference, you've got to build and show that you're doing something on the ground. But then things underground don't get done. You're not maintaining your water. You're not doing all of that kind of thing, because that's not sexy. Sewage is not sexy at all. But a nice house is. Unfortunately, there's not enough space in the sewage system. So, but let's leave it with optimism. I have honestly seen some amazing people who really do care. And I think Dr. Mayer is one of them. I just wanted to give an example of how I first met her. I wasn't, somebody else was doing Tshwane Metro. So it was my first time covering Tshwane. And I'm sitting in the lift and I'm like, where am I? What am I doing? And the Dr. Mayer said, let me take you. She took me. Now, I don't know this because I hadn't been covering Tshwane. I don't know that she's deputy mayor. I just see a really nice lady who's literally holding my hand and like, okay, you've got to go to this lift because it's very weird. This lift only goes to second floor. And then this sort of and there's one lift that takes you
Goes everywhere.
everywhere, one, and it's the service lift. And anyway, and then at the end, I'm like, oh, by the way, this is who I am, and I'm like, oh, thanks. So I have a lot of faith in you. I think the work you do on the ground is really incredible because, like you said, your office is not decorated because you don't spend your time in your office. You spend your time on the road, and that's very cool.
Thank you so much, Alex. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but what I would like to suggest is just to have just 2 contributions from the floor to indicate which burning issue do you guys think that we should really look at in this podcast? Just 2 only. If you can make it within 1 minute each, I'll be very happy. Thanks for a really exciting launch, and the podcast is definitely needed. Supply chain management, and I think political admin interfaces really, and I think we need to talk about what is it in the culture of the institution
is not enabling technical people who are highly skilled to actually be heard by elected representatives.
I think the issue that this is something that was raised by Ronald Pools in the State of the Nation, this fact of bringing on private partnerships and bringing them into the zeitgeist, if you will. Isn't this an issue? Isn't this a problem? Because we're not going to be allowing democracy to be as it should if we're going to keep relying on the private sector. And it means then that, for example, municipalities are not going to be doing the work that they should be doing because they rely too much on, say, for discovery to come and fix your potholes and whatever the case may be.
Thanks. A quick one on my side is the interface between administration and politics. I think what one needs to do also is to go back to the root of our political culture. In a village, in the world of the blind, a one-eyed man is a king, and a one-eyed man is in multiple ways. It's a metaphor. It's either money or it's knowledge. So therefore, for those that participate in party political activities on the ground, they know that the masses is the new currency. You have to pay them to get to a particular outcome. There is no way it will never filter into the administration. So therefore, if the ANC then says we're talking about renewal, it should not only be about leadership, it's also about the culture, the political character, or else we are going to breed political thuggery, which is already there. So essentially, such difficult, pointed, hard questions and decisions needs to be taken at party political level to inform a dynamic administration. Because it is garbage in at conference, garbage into the council. And I owe my I owe my branch because I have ascended. It is our turn to eat, I must make sure that we eat.
Thanks. Mine is to ask a question about the insidious role that technocrats and bureaucrats play in the dysfunction of council. Because clearly, awarding a tender, making tender decisions, and so on, politicians have an influence, but they don't ultimately make the decision. So clearly, some bureaucrats or even a technocrats, very skilled ones, are actually playing a fairly insidious role. And I think we haven't paid any attention to that whatsoever. Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Thanks very much. The other element from my side is really looking at the capacity of the administration to execute its duties. Because you see, when you say the political leadership trespass and end up dictating terms on the administration, the question becomes, do these administrators understand their role? To what extent do they? Because if they understand their role in the real sense of the word, they should be the one who are calling politicians to order to a certain extent. Because they are governed by legislation in executing the administrative duties. To a point where we shouldn't be actually looking at the pressure that the political leadership is feeling. Because if it doesn't make sense, administration must just go on.
I'm going to hijack the mic. Because I think this question about technocrats and bureaucrats, supply chain management, these are very important issues, sabotage of political leadership, because at times it does happen. You've got a group, whatever executive, who doesn't like the new political principle, and they go on a long mission to play politics. And of course, as you know, with Amendment 17, the big debate there was really to try and get politicians out of the bureaucracy, because we have to be honest that part of our problem is that the bureaucrats themselves are politicized. That's part of the problem. Then they can't act dispassionately
in terms of executing their tasks, because in that garbage in, garbage out at conference, the bureaucrat is there. The bureaucrat is there wearing a party t-shirt,
Voting on who becomes the next regional chairperson.
That's the reality of our problem. So we've got to ask ourselves, how do we pressure the professionals themselves to try and really not be too deep in the politics of things? Because that's where the problem comes. When I no longer like the regional secretary, and therefore I'm going to act in a particular way to sabotage. And of course, as I always say to people, and I've been saying this to my church, that because our relationship with money that is not ours is very troublesome. We have a problem with money that is not ours. Our money, we are very clear what we do with it and how we safeguard it. But this one that belongs to other people, the money that belongs to men, we want to have our long fingers. The last part, again on the question of capacity versus capability. A municipality in KZN that outsources bid adjudication to a company here in Johannesburg. They don't have the technical capacity for a bid adjudication committee. It's a company here in Mitre. Then now, what it introduces in terms of supply chain are multiple spheres of corruption. Because now you must bribe inside the municipality, because there's still a bid adjudication committee by name. Then you must bribe the people in the company here in Johannesburg in order for you to get a job. So I'm trying to say, yes, we must talk about this question of technocrats and bureaucrats and how sometimes they don't do their work. They are not competent. But the politicians are not competent to understand that these people are incompetent. Because at the end of the day, whatever we say, the ball is with the politicians at the end of the day. And the politician, if the politician is incompetent to realize incompetence, then there's a problem.
Yeah. I think, Tina, there's a lot for us to chew on.
Yeah, absolutely.
If this was a full-time job, I was going to say I said but this is voluntary. And it makes one think, certainly I hope we don't end up opening something like the DOGE, that Department of Government Efficiency. But it does talk to us needing to realize some efficiencies.
Just be nice to politicians, then the podcast will.
We are women of principles and independent thinkers. But what it also means is that it also requires us to think long and hard about how we keep the system in check. As an individual, as a member of a particular organization or a church and maintaining to be able to question when things need to be questioned. Because all of what we are talking about here, at the end of the day, it will materialize to what shows into your municipal bill. Those decisions that are made on your behalf. Tina, we've got our work cut out for us, and it's not just going to be with the officials or politicians, it will be with academia, with research institutions and the likes. And I look forward to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for those contributions. And it really pushes us to think beyond what we are seeing today, but to look at the long-term effects. Because one of the things that I mentioned is that what does the current system or the current practices tell us about the future of local government that we are going to have 10 to 20 years from now onwards? If this local government is boiling down to the big elephant in the room where patronage politics and self-preservation of bureaucrats is the main problem, then we'll have to confront the big elephant in the room that is also starting to spill over in those smaller opposition parties that we thought they were going to come into council and exercise accountability and decision making in the way in which citizens want to do. So on that note, let me say thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of it. I'm so happy that at least you still had majority of people here with us. They didn't sneak out. We know that we ran over the program. But I would like to hand over to EPF just to say a vote of thanks. And remember, every Friday, tune in. We will definitely send out a call when we are going to go live on our social media platform.
Like, click, and follow.
So from EPF, we would just like to extend a sincere thank you to everybody who showed up today, but especially to Dr. Tina and Municipal for initiating this important conversation and the social dialogue that I think is clearly very lacking. And I think as citizens wanting to see a better South Africa, and that's starting within our own municipalities and us taking accountability, being that public participation, being that educating ourselves, those are all very important factors, and this is a huge step in digitizing that process. So thank you so much. To everybody who's attended, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest and your participation in this very important topic. And lastly, to the EPF team, Emil, Mikhail, and especially our CEO, Joanna, for enabling these kinds of initiatives. And we welcome you all to engage with us and to further the impact that we are trying to make to improve South Africa. As we've seen here tonight, reliance or dependence on government is not going to push forward progress, but us holding government accountable is. So thank you all. And if I can just ask, like Dr. Tina did mention, unfortunately we are running a little bit over time, and we are governed by the regulations of our corporate space. So not to chase you by any means, but just to be mindful of the time. Thank you all so much.